I'm Dom,
And I'm Al.
and you're watching the Resilient Shift podcast. If you are a new listener or if you are returning for episode 3, thank you so much for being here. Be sure to follow our Instagram at Resilient Shift Pod, and we got a great episode planned for you. This is episode 3 titled "Turning L's into Growth."
So like Dom said, this is turning losses into growth. So I want to start that off. And Dom, I want to ask you, what is the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the word loss?
Loss. So automatically, the
Mhm.
word bad. Loss, no, bad. We don't want them. They're a part of life, and you have to learn how to spin a loss into kind of a positive thing for you. But immediately when I hear your loss, bad.
And do you think that has anything to do with the experience you've had in the past? Or do you think just like as a society, we automatically think loss, bad?
I think as no, not so much
Mhm.
society. Get away from society. I think my idea of loss first started because that's probably where I first learned it was
Mhm.
sports, right? No one likes to lose. You don't want to lose. You want to win games. You want to play well. Um, so that's how I conceptualize loss, because in the sports world, that's the case. Losing is bad. There's a winner and there's a loser, and you want to be on the winning side. Um, Losses, don't get me wrong, losses are still bad,
Mhm.
I think, but I think it's important to be able to take things from losses that will help you grow.
Of course. And you mentioned sports a lot, but I want to hear maybe about a loss in life, right? What's something you consider a loss in life? And is it also just as bad as losing in a sports game?
Um, wow, okay. Um, I guess when I had to go back into chemotherapy the second time
Mhm.
after my first round, that was definitely a loss for me personally. Um, is it worse than a loss in sports? Yeah,
Mm.
definitely.
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you saying that. But now I want to talk a little bit. So we hear about loss, like bad. You lose in a sports game, bad, right? Disappointed. Going back to chemo, big loss for you, right? Do you consider loss and failure to be the same thing, or do you consider them to be different?
Ooh, loss and failure. I think I think in a way they are,
Mhm.
right? I look at maybe a loss more in the sense of, maybe things just didn't go your way. Where I view failure more of there was some sort of factor that caused me to fail.
Mhm.
Whether that be lack of preparation or, my mindset wasn't right walking into whatever I was doing. But that's kind of how I put a definition to a failure as opposed to a loss, because again, back to sports.
Mhm.
I remember times in my soccer career, hockey career, lacrosse, everything, even golf. There were times where I prepared, I did my best, I even played well,
Mhm.
and it just wasn't enough. Who My opponent was better than me,
Mhm. Of course.
so I consider that a loss. And while you still don't like those, I think that's definitely different than a failure.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I agree. I think that they're similar in a lot of ways, but they're also completely different. But I think at the end of the day, whether it's a loss or a failure, I think there's lessons to be learned from both of them.
Sure.
Sometimes the harder lessons to learn than others, and some losses are much harder than other losses. But let's talk about what have you learned from a loss in your life?
What have I learned from a loss? Um, a loss or a failure, right? Because I like how you
Hmm.
differentiated those two words. Is again, like anything else, all up to perspective,
Hmm.
right? And to me, I think about automatically when I go through a loss or a failure, I just feel like I didn't even do something well, even if I did something well. Um, my mind goes to what can I change? What can I, adapt, or what can I do differently? Um, I think that's just where my mind goes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what do you think when you say, "What can I do differently? How can I adapt differently?" Have you changed any of the ways that you live your life or how you prepare for things because of a loss you faced?
Yeah, naturally, I would assume like you too, you're naturally a hard person on
Yeah.
yourself, as am I. Um, so I honestly like kind of lighten my mindset a little bit going into things where, you know, I always felt like even in school, right, when you would
Mm.
study or, you'd be writing a paper, you could always feel like you did more,
Mhm.
right? And I think that element is, comes with people who are hard on themselves naturally.
Mhm.
Um, so I kind of gave myself that space to be like, all right, here are the top 5 things that I want to do going
Mhm.
into this. And if I can accomplish those, that to me now is enough of a preparedness to, you know, feel good going forward with a task.
Mhm. Yeah, and when you say that you're hard on yourself, right? Or maybe even school, and I think that's a great example where you studied and maybe you just didn't get the result you want. For me, I look at it as I was always someone who had to study for tests. Like I had to study for hours and hours until I could do good on a test. And if I didn't, I would always like compare myself to other people, I think. And I think that was my biggest enemy because I'd be like, well, they don't even have to study and they get 100. And I just studied for hours and I didn't even get 100.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes one, the expectations we set on ourselves and the comparisons we have to ourselves also determine if we fail or succeed.
How have you changed your expectations of yourself to like better navigate that?
I think I mean, I've definitely changed with, I guess, accepting the losses I've had. Um, I'd be lying if I said I was no longer hard on myself because still pick myself apart sometimes in my losses, but I think I'm more realistic in what I pick myself apart for and acknowledge like you did everything you could and maybe it just wasn't your day. And I don't look at it as I just failed completely, but maybe I just failed partially and I can recover from this.
Mhm.
I think in the past I just viewed things as like I lost and it can't get better, where now I'm like, no, it can get better. And I question and reflect a lot on what I can learn
Okay.
from those losses.
Yeah, I would agree with
Mhm.
all that, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah. And I think the hardest part about that when reflecting, even though we're growing in our reflections, it sometimes does make the loss a lot harder because then you start to question like maybe why you lost or why you failed. Um, so for me, it could be, I guess, recently with work and like starting my jobs, if the meeting didn't go as well as I wanted, or I didn't like answer a question that I thought I wanted. To me, sometimes I view that as a failure when really it's not.
Yeah,
It's not failing. It's my first time at the job, like, my first time doing some of these meetings,
Mhm.
and really I'm just learning the ins and outs of them.
Yeah, I feel the same thing
Mhm,
when like I go into an interaction or a meeting or interview, and I feel like I didn't articulate myself as
mhm,
well as I could have or should have. Or there's a few like more buzzwords that
mhm,
I wish I used that would have clearly kind of
mhm,
communicated what I was trying to say. And like even though like the person like liked me and
mhm,
like I still felt like the interview or whatever went relatively well.
mm,
Like I still walk out of there sometimes being like, oh man,
mhm.
that was brutal.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that in the interview because I recently had an interview, and I think it was probably the 3rd round of the interview, and there was one question they asked me, and I didn't really answer it the best that I wanted to. Turns out at the end of it all, I got the job, but even getting the job, like, I was still focused on that one question I didn't answer
Yeah, when
correctly,
that's relevant.
and
Yeah.
it's relevant, right? Like, you got the job, you won, you got the goal you wanted, but to me, I was still like all those admin are still gonna remember that one answer I gave, that's how they're gonna know
Yep.
me, when really they're probably in a room talking about, like, all the questions I did answer right and, like, the good things I did,
Sure.
but I think sometimes we're so focused on, like, "Here's all the good, here's a little bad," but, like, we're so focused on the bad, and I think sometimes that takes away how losses really do lead to growth, and I
Yeah.
think that we want our listeners we've learned the hard way that if you could get yourself out of the what's the bad and like just picking yourself apart to like how can I grow? What did I learn from this? Then that's you growing and that's like a really important thing to do in your life.
Something that I like struggle with is definitely the fine line and difference between, like you said, picking yourself apart
Mhm,
and being self-reflective, right?
mhm,
Because I think in order to grow, you need to be self-reflective and
mhm,
aware of not only, yourself and the job you're doing, but the way other people around you or important people in
mhm,
whatever task you're doing are perceiving what you were doing. Um, but I often struggle a lot
mhm,
with, finding that balance of being, reflective and
mhm,
a positive kind of manner to grow, and like just brutally picking myself apart with like the worst self-talk you've ever heard.
Ever heard?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up self-talk because I want to hear we've talked a lot a bit about like picking ourselves apart, right? And the negative. When you do face a loss though, or maybe a failure that you have had in the past, what self-talk did you say to yourselves to get you to push through it? What are some of the positive you said to yourself? Or maybe even what's something negative is like a flip for you and pushed you forward to improve?
Yeah. I got to be honest, my self-talk even
Mhm.
to this day is not great
Mhm.
by any means. It's something I try to work on, but it's definitely not great. I definitely like one thing that always gets me out of it is like I could replay scenario a million
Mhm.
times, especially like, the chemotherapy and what didn't work and why I got to do it again. Um, but like I always kind of gravitate back to like this idea of like, well, I'm gonna figure it out
Mhm.
because that's me. I'm Dom,
Mhm.
right? Um, and that's something, even though like sometimes I may have to trick myself by saying it, um, when I kind of reach that place, like internally in my mind, is usually when I kind of, you know, get my foot on the gas and
Mhm.
get things rolling.
Yeah, and do you think because you mentioned a lot of hard things you've gone through, right? Like the chemotherapy, what worked, what didn't work. Oftentimes, and for you, do you think it's because you go through such hard things that it's so hard to give yourself some positive self-talk, or just the fact that you are naturally hard on yourself?
I think I'm naturally hard on myself. I think I would even say that going through what I went through and learning the things that I learned in terms of dealing and
Mhm.
living with cancer
Yeah.
actually made me give myself maybe a little bit more grace,
Mm.
and things that, I feel like I didn't do well or I perceive as a loss or a failure. So I definitely think my situation and, the life I've lived thus far has actually helped me
Mhm.
instead of make it, worse.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense, and it seems like through that, we talked a lot about reflection and how it can be hard, but you just reflected in a really positive way by saying the grace
Yeah,
it gave you and that you give yourself because of it. So I think that's really awesome, and then we talk a lot of bit about self-talk, right, and how hard we on ourselves, but I think that and I've seen it before, it's really easy to give someone great advice after they experience a loss or failure, but a lot
sure.
of times can't give the advice you take, right? So I wanna ask what's advice maybe you've given someone else that they have experienced a loss, failure, disappointment? What advice would you give them, or would you give them today? Because I'm sure some of our listeners are going through some of the same things.
Yeah, keep going, I
Mhm.
think is definitely something that I've told a lot of people, whether it's been friends or just people who have asked me like for help or, um, there's being relentless always wins.
Mhm.
Always. You know, um, that's true for my chemotherapy, right? I went through 2-year rounds. I went through another one. I was relentless with treatments. I didn't want to be.
Mhm.
The doctors told me I had to be. Um, but I'm in a good place now, right? So I think just working, and whether like working doesn't have to be necessarily working, but just like that could be working on your mindset,
Mhm.
walking into something, right? But being relentless in an approach to whatever it is you're doing, I think would be the best advice I would give somebody. I saw a TikTok today actually that I want to talk about. I forget the user that it was, but it was just him sitting in front of a camera and he says, shoot the ball,
Mhm.
right? He's like, I want you to shoot the ball. That's all I want you to do this year, shoot. And it was actually really funny because we kind of had this idea for an episode, and he's talking about it's not about wins, losses, failures, but you have to be willing to shoot the ball. And I think that kind of ties into, I'm sure if you've listened to our podcast before, you've heard me say the phrase show up, right? I got it tattooed on my arm. Um, I think that's kind of the same thing, right? If you're show up, shoot the ball, show up, shoot the ball. And I think, the same thing. It all goes back to being relentless in whatever it is you want to do.
Mhm. Yeah, and I love shoot the ball, and you saying that just made me think of something. And often we define failure as either not doing good, right? Failing a test, losing a game, not achieving the
But isn't
goal.
a success that you did it?
So that's what I was gonna say.
Okay.
So
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
you
jump
beat
back
me
at you.
to it. So I was gonna say that sometimes people say, like, not trying, that's failure, right? Not even getting yourself to start, not getting yourself to try to do it, that's failure. But if you can start something, if it doesn't go well, at least you started it. And I think often we're so big to say I failed or I lost. And let's change that, right? You started and kudos to you for starting because the hardest thing to do anything is to start or put yourself out there.
Yeah. I came up with a quote. This might be a good one. Me personally, I would rather fail failing than fail not trying.
Mhm,
I think the reverse, at least inside me, eats me up a lot more
mhm,
than if I were to fall flat on my face trying to do something.
mm. Of course, yeah, and I think sometimes we're so scared of failure that that's the reason we don't start. But once you start something and you fail, it is that much harder to start again. But at least you know you did it, you know how to start, and now you know what to do differently.
I would challenge everybody listening right now that you say failure by not starting.
Mhm,
I would say that if you have an idea or a goal and you don't start, that's a failure
mhm,
because at least me, I feel like I owe it to me to give it a shot because I wouldn't have had that thought if I wasn't capable of
mhm,
doing it. I think that's at least how my brain works. I think a lot of other people's do.
mhm,
Um, if you can think something, you can do it, because I think our perceptions, thoughts, even what's in our heart, right,
mhm,
comes out in a thought. And how can you connect language to that thought and do the things necessary, um, to at least
mm.
shoot the ball,
Yeah.
like we were just talking about.
Mhm. Of course, and I think with that comes belief, right? And I think sometimes where it's so easy for us to tell our loved ones or people we care about that we believe in them, right? It's so easy to say the words, I believe in you, but it's that much harder to say it to ourselves. And I want to challenge listeners to look in the mirror and tell yourself that you believe in you, just as you would tell someone else. And it's so easy to push someone towards their other goals and tell them they can do it, help someone else get started. But then when it comes to you, it seems like all of that goes out the window.
Yeah, I think belief, I like that you said that, belief in manifestation is definitely a positive thing. Because even with like chemotherapy and going to appointments where I used to walk into an appointment and not know whether I was going to get good news, bad news, the worst news, I always like told myself, like I still do it today, like
Mhm.
to this day when I go for MRIs, like you get dressed, you have to go, they ask you if you want to use the bathroom. I literally go in the bathroom and I look at myself. And I'm like, you're the man, dude. Like, it's all going to be good. And I think putting that out into the universe and genuinely believing that, you know, is a real thing. You can make the argument, well, it doesn't impact anything scientifically. You got tumors, Dom. And, you know, gotta have faith. You gotta believe in, what you choose to believe in.
Mhm. Yeah, I like that. And I think confidence, right? You're halfway there if you believe in yourself, if you have that confidence. And for me, it goes back to when after I recovered from a lot of my surgeries, getting back to sports was a really long road for me. Had to start off at like low levels, and a lot of my coaches judged me. Coming back from surgery, I was like really weak. I was very small because of it. So my bones were weaker than they should have been. I had hardware that was in my spine, which prevented me from growing. So I was always the smallest one on the team. So sometimes I'd walk up to a tryout and coaches would already count me out. Some
Okay.
coaches would tell me, you're not strong enough right now, come back next year. And some of those conversations happened before the tryout even started.
Wow.
So a lot of times I felt really defeated because some of it was out of my control, right? I could not control that I had hardware in my spine that
Yeah.
prevented me from growing.
Mm.
I can't get taller, or it was really hard for me to get strong too because I naturally had some bone loss. So a lot of coaches could say, well, just like hit the weight room and gain some muscle. But for me, it would be 10 times harder. And a lot of times I felt like I couldn't give coaches what they wanted because they already counted me out before seeing
Okay.
what I could give. And then it,
Yeah.
it took just one coach taking a chance on me for me to be able to prove myself. So it took a lot of not giving up and going to more tryouts and just trying different teams. And I really did just need that one person to believe in me, right?
Sure.
And then there were times too, like middle school teams that I would beat some of the bigger girls on my teams, and instead of my coaches saying good job to me, which I didn't always need a compliment, they would do kind of like they were trying to motivate the other girls by saying, Alex shouldn't be beating you. She's the smallest on the team. Or like, I played basketball for a little bit and like, I just worked really hard. So I'd get rebounds and the coach would be like, are you guys kidding me? This girl's 5 foot getting a rebound over you. And sometimes it fueled me, but a lot of times it did. Even though I was getting that rebound, it felt like a failure because the coach was saying someone else should have gotten it.
Okay.
And I think looking back at it now, I should not have viewed it as a failure. I should have been like, kudos to me for getting it. I don't need a coach to tell me that. Maybe I just needed myself to say that and like be your biggest cheerleader.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of it. And sounds like you had some tough coaches, to be honest.
He said, but I think it got me to where I am today, and it gave me that. I always like to say the saying, like, hard work is the most important, right? Sometimes it's not just about talent. And unfortunately, some people don't look for that hard work you have. But for me, no matter how much playing time I got, getting back to sports was one of the hardest things. If I was on that field for 30 seconds, I was giving you all I had, and I was the happiest person to be out on that field right now.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we could look at it as you only got 30 seconds. What can you do in 30 seconds? But make that 30 seconds.
That's a whole shift.
It is. Make that 30 seconds your time to shine.
Yeah.
And I think that transfers to life too, right? Whether it's a meeting, whether it's just something you do, people you see, like inspire people, inspire yourself, and like 30 seconds, go all out.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I know I want to hear more about, so we talked a lot about, I asked you what loss means to you, what failure means to you. What does growth mean to you? When you hear that word, what do you think?
Growth to me is the ability to adapt and change, right? So I think about it in, my business. It's how do I get better? Whether that's, maybe I want 2 more sales a month than I had last month. Maybe I want to post, every day this month and I only hit 15 days last month. Or it's even roller hockey, right? Like I feel like, the boots aren't moving well tonight. What can I do instead? How can I be of help or do better in whatever it is I'm trying to do? And I think growth is not so much doing that, but the ability to recognize it. And again, I'm going to say shoot the ball, right? To take the step to whatever you quantify is what you need to grow in that moment at that thing.
Yeah, I like that. And I think I asked you, is failure and loss the same things? And I want to ask you, is growth and success the same thing to you?
It didn't used to be, but I've learned honestly very recently that growth is success because growth is movement. And really, as I get older, everything I do is about momentum now. How can I keep momentum? How can I roll momentum? And we talked about, I think in episode 1, like the idea of stacking small wins, right? That's momentum. So I would say growth and success. Growth is success, but I don't necessarily know if success is growth.
Yeah, I like that. And I think everyone views it differently, but I like what you said with celebrate those small wins, right? Do things with momentum and intention. And I like what you said about setting those goals, right? Maybe it's just I want to get 2 sales this week or this month, but I think with that you also have to be able to adapt and change those goals. And changing a goal isn't failure, right? If you want to get 2 sales but you're not hitting 2, maybe put it down to 1. And then you get 1 for a little bit and you can celebrate that as a win.
Yeah.
Because I think often we don't achieve our goal. Sometimes we just give up on it and maybe we're just not ready to hit the goal we set, and we need to be willing to back down a little bit. And I recently just ran the New York City Marathon.
Yes.
Well, not recently. It's actually been 2 years. But I ran.
No, it's been a year, hasn't it?
No, 2 years. I ran it 2 years ago.
Okay. I got it.
Yeah. But anyways, ran the New York City Marathon, and it was a pretty big deal for me to run the marathon given all my health complications, 2 major back surgeries, some heart issues. And for a long time, way back when I was younger, there was a time doctors didn't even know I was going to walk again. So fast forward to my life now, running 26.2 miles was an
Tell them the
incredible.
time, let them know the time, let them
But
know the
I'll
time.
get there, I'll get there, but once I did it, I set this goal that I wanted to break 4 hours, and, that was, like, it's a pretty big achievement to run it in under 4,
Yeah,
and I think my mom and some other people, given some of the challenges I faced, had to be a little bit realistic with me, and they're like, "Why don't you just set the goal to just finish?" And I kinda caved, but,
yeah,
like,
like a
in my
normal human.
in my head, I still had that I wanna break 4, and I actually did, I got 3:38,
Crushed for. You didn't
and
break for, you
I
crushed for.
I crushed 4, and I was flying through it, like, I really enjoyed the crowd, and for that, I think that was a big success for me, but in my training, I think I did have to give myself some grace, like, there was some runs that I felt great, actually right before the marathon when I was running my 18 miler,
Mhm.
I wasn't able to finish it. I got really sick on it. I had to be picked up and driven home, was like in bed for 2 days
Yep.
because of it. And at that moment, I was like, if I can't run 18, how am I going to run 26? And I
Yeah.
almost like gave up in that
Mhm.
time. And my mom helped me train for a lot. And she's like, you'll be fine. You don't need to do it. And I wanted to run 20 before, but I had to run 18. I had to prove to myself I could run 18 and then that I could run 20. And once I did, that was enough for me to be like, I can do this.
Yeah,
And I think we just have to be willing to make those changes. And even though I did achieve my goal and I broke 4,
sure,
I almost did have to be willing to change my goal a little bit and go a little bit easier on myself to be like, let me just finish this.
sure.
And I think we often don't do that. I think sometimes if we don't achieve goals, we just automatically say, I didn't achieve this, it's failure. But I like what you said with the 2 sales, and I want you to be willing to back that down if you can't get it. And it doesn't mean you can go up to those 2, but maybe you just need to back it down before you're ready to hit that high goal.
Yeah. Speaking of the marathon, though,
Mhm.
I do wanna tell a funny story.
Mhm.
You were running the marathon and your headphones died, right?
No, so I actually didn't put my music on. So I had my beats already. I was on the bridge that you start on, and the mute they were playing I think Brooklyn song. Do you know that song? New York song. Welcome to New York.
Well, like the Taylor Swift, like, "Welcome
No,
to New York"?
I'm blanking on it.
Like Jay-Z, like Empire State of Mind?
Yes, Empire State of Mind, and it just felt so surreal to be standing on the bridge with so many people
Oh,
hearing
okay.
that song. And they like started the race and I like took off and I was about to put my music on, but once I got into the city, the crowd was incredible. My name was on my
So
shirt.
you ran it without music.
I ran it without music.
Diabolical.
Yes,
Diabolical.
but I did because the crowd was just really amazing and it was such a surreal
That's some
experience.
Goggins type stuff.
Yes, but what you're thinking, so my watch died
Your watch
at
died.
mile 20. And for me, that was a really, really big mental block for me,
Okay.
because I knew I had 3 miles to go, but I was so tired mentally at that point in the race. My back was on fire. I felt the worst that I felt the whole race.
How'd you overcome it?
Um, I just pushed through and I just got through there. I knew you were gonna be waiting at mile 26 before I crossed the finish
Yeah.
line, and I was like,
Ran right past me.
just trying
Didn't
to
even
find
see me.
you. I did run right past him. Um, and the crowd helped me, but for me, I just wanted to know, like, how close was I to mile 21? How close was I
Yeah,
to mile
yeah, yeah.
22?
You don't know.
And I didn't know. And
They have mile markers too, right?
they had markers, but they weren't kilometers. And at that point in the race, when I tell you mentally drained, I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, I remember seeing you after
Mm,
you were out of it, like,
so out of it, and I needed my watch
yeah,
to, like, see those things, and sometimes I question, I said, "If my watch didn't die, would I have gotten faster?" And I think that is the self-criticism in us, right? And the what ifs, and, like,
yeah,
instead of just being like, "Al, you just completely crushed your goal, like, you
yep,
didn't just break 4, you really broke
with
4."
authority.
But to me, I just was like, I wonder, like, had my watch and, like, who knows if it would have made a difference, but, like, part of me does wonder that. But I think for me to, like, grow and reach the success I want, it's just to be content with the goals I achieve
Yeah,
and not to like, you achieved your goal. And I think sometimes people think, like, you're just are self-critical even if you lose or you fail. But for me, I'm still self-critical if I win,
yeah,
right? And I think that to get to success, we all define success differently.
Mhm.
So for myself, I want to get to a point where success looks like not critiquing myself in moments and just
Yeah.
being proud of myself.
Mhm.
Like I would be proud of someone else.
Sure.
So yeah, that's my little rant about the marathon. But I want you to talk more. We talked a lot about a lot a bit about growth, and actually funny story, and our listeners don't know this, but when we were talking about what our topic should be for the next
Yeah.
pod, I actually thought about it during the Super Bowl. So it
During the
was
Super
yes, it was
Okay.
towards the very end of the
I don't
game.
even know this.
You don't even know this, yeah. So towards the very end of the game, at this point, we kind of knew that the Seahawks were going to win,
Love
and
that.
I was a little disappointed. But one of the announcers was talking about Drake May, and he was saying he said something that stuck with me, and he's like,
More like Drake forgot to play.
"No, no, not that." But I have to give him credit. His whole team didn't show up. But what the announcer said was, you got to wonder what Drake May is thinking right now, knowing he's going to lose this game. And you have to wonder if he thinks that, will I ever be back in the Super Bowl again? And that really stuck with me because he's this young kid, like playing in a Super Bowl. He made it to the Super Bowl, which is an incredible achievement. I think definitely at his age too. And the announcers were questioning, like, is he ever going to make it back there again?
Yeah.
And I think like that really stuck with me because maybe he's thinking that. I don't think that was his immediate thought
Sure.
right after the game. I'm sure in his career he'll have that again. But instead of saying, is he ever going to make it back again? And for him to question, am I ever going to make it back to the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
Let's change that to, what does he need to do to make it back here? Or what can I do to make sure I'm playing again?
Okay.
And that just stuck with me. And I knew that they were going to lose at that point, right? There was about 20 seconds left in the game. And I think for him, that's a loss, right? Did he
It's a big
fail?
loss.
I don't think he failed. I think that his team didn't show up, right? And maybe that is failure. I think it depends on how everyone views it.
Sure.
He just happened to lose a really big stake game.
The biggest stake game.
Yes, the biggest stake game. But let's not think about, is this kid who is so young and so young in his career ever going to end up back here?
Yeah.
Right. But maybe, and I think that happens a lot with losses, right? Am I going to be fast again? Am I going to ever win again? But if it's a regular game,
I didn't think I'd play hockey again just because
You didn't.
I felt like I didn't play it for
Mhm.
long enough to be able to get back into it when, I was healthy enough in college, or if I would even have the opportunity to play again. And, then I ran into college
Mhm.
roller hockey.
Yeah.
So,
Of course, but I think that, and it really struck with me, and I think it's because often we're so like, I'll never be able to do this again, or like,
yeah.
am I going to make it back here? Am I ever going to get a job, right? You go on a few interviews, you don't get what you want.
Yep.
Am I ever going to land the job I want? But I think we should shift our mindset into, what do I need to do to achieve my goal?
Hmm.
Right. And maybe for him, it's not, maybe he will end up in the Super Bowl again next year,
Yeah.
but maybe it's, what do I need to do to be okay in 3 years? How can I better my game in 3 years? And just giving yourself a little bit of leeway and really reflecting on that game. But also for him, I still hope that he can find something good that happened in the game. I think with a big loss like that, he's just going to beat up every single thing he did, every incomplete pass, right? Turnovers, what he could have done differently. And I bet you he's not going to be like, what did I do good in that game? Right? You just lost the Super Bowl.
Mhm.
But maybe let's challenge him too. I hope that he'll listen to this, but just my listeners, like, I hope in your moments that you fail or achieve what you want, you can take away something that still went
Yeah.
good and be able to enjoy, like you still played in the Super Bowl at such a young age.
Sure. Yeah.
Is there anything like that sticks with you or that you relate to? I hear you say hockey.
Um, yeah, I definitely kind of try to embrace that mentality in everything I do. I just think it's important. You have to first, it starts with wanting to do well, right? Like that's the basis of everything. You want to be good. You want to do well, whatever it is you're doing. You want to be healthy, whatever the situation may be. Even if you aren't in that spot and you're down on yourself, you know, take a second and look, inside you. And the answer is always because I want to be great, because I want to be good. Maybe you want to have a better social life. Maybe, you want a new job. Maybe you struggle with some sort of anxiety, whatever it is. You know, at the base of it is I want to not have this problem, right? Like I want to do better. I think people are just like that, right? And I think that even when things get rough, you gotta you gotta dumb it down, right? Like keep it simple, stupid, right? Like I want to be here, you know. Um, so I try to look at life that way and everything I do, especially hockey. There was a time, especially when I was getting back into it, especially college roller, because it was significantly more competitive than what I'm doing now, just men's league. But I would look at myself when I started playing again and be like, man, like I can't skate well. It doesn't feel good. The hands aren't moving, feet aren't moving. And it just felt like nothing was going my way. I couldn't get bounces, and then that turned into me not getting a lot of playing time. Um, and I got to a point, and it's a shame because I got to this point after college roller was over. Um, but I'm like, I get to come out of here and skate, man. Like and then like 75% of the time I get to go do it with my dad too. Like, you know, I, you really got to just change your perspective. One, because you deserve it, but two, your perspective is what you make it, right? So it's whatever you want it to be. You really have the world, at your fingers when you think about perspective, and that's kind of how I embodied that through my, hockey career.
Is there a perspective that you used to have that has changed over the course of the years?
Ooh, perspective that's changed. Kind of what we were talking about before, where growth is success.
Mm.
Where I would have a great game and, maybe we didn't win, which would bother me. But like I was able to put up 2 points and like, the past 4 weeks I didn't put up any points or I put up 1 point. You know, um that even though we lost, that to me was growth, right? Because I was skating better. Or like I even now, like to the point of roller hockey, look at it in such small segments where like, if a puck goes deep and, me and an opposing defenseman are hitting the red line at the same time, and it's basically just a race to the goal line and get the puck. Um, there have been weeks where I feel like I can never get the jump on that guy ever. And then there's weeks where I feel like I blew past him, was never even going to question I was getting that puck. I even look at it in terms of that, or like if that happens like a few times a game, did I get 2 out of 4 of them? Last week I only got 1 out of 4. Tonight I rolled 5 out of 5. Tonight I rolled 2 out of 3, but on the second one, I got a point out of the play. That's how I look at growth is success. That's definitely a mentality that I have developed that has changed, especially getting back into athletics. And also, part of it is giving myself the grace with my own body that, you know, I've gone through almost 4 or 5 years of chemo at this point. And, you know, they say, which, believe me, I know is true now, but like chemotherapy could affect your body for like almost like 10 years after you finish, which to me is crazy, but I definitely still, go through things with that too. Like there was a long time where I had trouble building muscle, getting rid of, steroid fat from steroids I had to take during chemo. Um, and like that was all kind of part of it. You kind of lose your figure a little bit. It was hard for like my arms to like start to get defined again. Um, so I also had to look at it from that angle as well. It's like, listen, dude, you're out here skating.
Mhm.
Like, you can be in bed. You could, not be able to walk. You remember when you walked up the stairs, you couldn't breathe by the time you got to the top because you were so drained from chemo? Well, we're not there right now. So stop having stupid ideas,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah, and I like that, and I like how you said sometimes when we lose in a game, we're so focused on that that we forget maybe you just played the best game of your life, right? Or for me in lacrosse, I was really hard on myself. There were times where I'd have a career high of however many ground balls I got, right? Let's say it was 5 ground balls in a game, but I had 1 turnover. All I was focused on was that 1 turnover. I replayed it in my head constantly. And looking back, a lot of people looked up to me and came to me for advice. I was the captain of the lacrosse team for a good 4 years, which was a pretty cool role to have. And I think often it kind of helped me show that you don't need to be the best at your sport or have all these years in it. It was only my 2nd year playing the sport that I was named the captain. And sometimes it's not about experience, but what you do for others and the leader you are. And I say that because a lot of advice I gave other athletes, and I think it will stick with you and some of our listeners, is I told them that acts like that one game was the only game they had to make a highlight video
Yeah.
for recruitment or for a video or for a college coach. And some of them would look at me like I was crazy. I was like, this is the only game you have. I said, you need to find one good thing for me and you need to make a video. And they didn't actually have to do it, but mentally I wanted them to do it.
Yeah. Clip it.
Clip it. And it really stuck with them because we're
Yeah.
stuck on all the bad, right? But if you're given this one part of your life that you need to make a reel, a highlight reel for, I bet you'd find something good.
Yeah.
And I think that
That's a good strategy. I like that.
Thank you. So maybe you can use it moving forward. And
Yeah.
it doesn't even have to be in sports. It can be your day, right? Say
Sure.
we lived by, I need you, say you're writing a book. You need to write a chapter about just today. And I want it to be all about the good that happened today. And I want it to be at least a page. Right? It might be really hard to write about all the good that happened in one day. But maybe you did have a bad day and it forces your brain to focus on that good. And
Yeah.
I think that helps us celebrate those little wins and let's get away from that negative thinking pattern and just think positively. And there are some games where maybe you just didn't have, it was an off day. Maybe you didn't have a good game.
Sure.
But then in that highlight reel, maybe you're showing me you high-fiving a teammate. And that means you were a good teammate that day. Doesn't necessarily have to be about the stats you did in the game.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's my tidbit of advice for getting through that self-criticism.
I'll give it a try. See if it works.
Let me know. And then let's talk a little bit about your business, because I'm sure there's a lot. I bring this up because sometimes businesses, it's all about sales, right? And
Yep.
a lot of it is number driven. But do you think because it's number driven that impacts whether you're being successful or not in your business?
I think in a way it does, and I think, sometimes it's hard to get away from, because, that's why you're doing, like, we're in a business to make money, right? We're trying to grow a community so we can give back to it using, the money that we make from sales. And, I try not to look at it from the perspective of, like you said, driving numbers. But everything I do and every single win and success in my business, like we spoke about last week, whether that's finishing a new design or getting social media posts out or, whatever it is, those steps are, I'm ultimately taking those steps so I can drive the numbers, right? So I think it's important to definitely keep it in mind, but to also put it where it belongs in a way, right? So, defining the successes, that's going to lead to your ultimate goal of, the success of driving your numbers. But like I said, I think it's important to kind of put that in its place and keep it there. Always refer to it, be conscious. But yeah, I think it's got to be kind of kept in its place and, on a shelf that you look at every now and again when you feel good about the little growths and successes that you've been putting into it.
I like that because I think, like we said, right, business, a lot of it is number driven. How many sales do I make? Is my business making money? Am I losing money? Those are all things. It's part of the business world, right? You can't change it. It's there. But I like what you said with let's have that success, but let's also have those other successes. And I think sometimes we need to have 2 levels. Some you can't control, but some you can. And the biggest thing is your attitude, right? Let's go into it with a positive attitude and working hard. And If you don't have sales for 5 days, maybe it's what changes do I need to make to my business? Maybe I need to market this more or try new things. And that's success for you of admitting that what you created needs to be changed.
Yeah, I definitely, you know, I think that's just how it is, right? Like,
Mhm.
I keep saying it over and over again, but you got to put things in boxes where they belong. And, you don't just go throw those boxes in the corner, put them in the attic and never look at them again. But, the boxes are there so you can grab
Mhm.
what you need, right? And I think it's important, not only for your mental health, but to build confidence and momentum, like we were talking about before, to have the consciousness to know when to look in what box,
Mhm.
you know? And I think that's something that, I definitely still struggle with at times, but it's definitely something I've paid a lot of attention to and, you know, doing better. Um, I do have a question for you though.
Oh, usually I'm asking the
I
questions.
know, role reversal, right? Uno reverse card. How do you handle a struggle or a failure or a loss when things already aren't going good, right? Because we're talking about all these strategies and kind of mental tips and tricks and, you know, ways to compartmentalize things, um, which I really only like think about doing when everything else seems like it's going okay, right? So how do you make sense of something bad that's happening when the rest of your world or different aspects of your life are already kind of quote unquote in the dumps?
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a really hard one. There's a lot of things I have faced. I've faced a lot of really hard things in my life. And sometimes things will happen to me, and sometimes it's things that I'm like, this is unheard of course this would happen to me, or sometimes I say only these things happen to me. And a lot of times I get things in waves, right? It's one thing happened today, the next thing happened this day. I get bad news from this
Yep.
doctor. I didn't make this team. Um,
There's a word for that.
What's the word?
My dad used to call it a case of the effets.
Mhm. So,
That's what he used to tell me when I was a kid.
um, and it's really hard. I think I've gotten better as I've gotten older, but I got stuck in a lot of the thinking pattern of why me, right? I've
Sure.
always been someone who, no matter what has been happening to me in the world, my biggest thing is being positive, showing up with a smile, always working hard, but I'm also, I like to think, a really good person. So I would do anything for anyone, no matter what. And a lot of times when bad things would happen to me, sometimes I'd get so caught into questioning why. And I was like, I don't like to think that I do things wrong. Not that you ever deserve anything to happen to you if you do things wrong, but I was so stuck in I'm such a good person, like
Yeah.
why are all these bad things happening to me? But I think what really stuck with it is I never stopped being a good person. No matter how much bad happened to me, no matter what was going wrong in my life, I just always made sure to be kind to others. And I knew what it was like to feel disappointed.
Yeah.
I was always someone who worked really hard, and sometimes things just wouldn't go my way. Sometimes I wouldn't achieve the goal I wanted to achieve, or um, even a lot with my health. Like there'd be times where I thought that I'd get news from the doctor to clear me for sports, and it would be the complete opposite of
Yep.
even giving me a longer timeline. A lot of my um, MRIs, like as simple as like nobody likes to go for an MRI to begin with,
Nope.
but like here I am already going for MRI, which
I got one
was
in 2 weeks.
mhm. Oh, you do? Um, it was terrible to be going into the MRI, right? And almost like so many things went wrong when I was getting the MRI, right? When I would have to go in for them to put the contrast in my arm,
Mhm.
um, they would either like miss the vein or like do something wrong, and then I'd go back in the machine, then I'd have to come back out for them to fix something, and just things would go wrong, and it was already like this is already terrible, and now like something else is bad that's
Yeah.
happening. But I think I just walked away with it knowing that each day was a new day. So the past 3 days may have been bad, but I always told myself, but the 4th day could be good.
Yeah.
And you have to keep going because you never know when you're going to get your success story. And you never even know when you can inspire somebody else to keep going. So maybe it was really hard for me to keep going, but I was like, I want to keep going to show others that they also should keep going and help others achieve their goal. And maybe that was selfish to myself because sometimes I was so focused on others, because I was always like, what can I do to help them? And I was almost like, I need to be okay to help others. But that is what got me through. And I think that perspective of every day is a new day and you just have to wake up with a positive attitude. And I've said it a lot in our past episodes. We can't control what happens to us, unfortunately,
Yeah.
but you can control how you react and whether you give up or not.
Mm.
And for me, and going back to the marathon, and this is something my mom would tell me, a marathon's not just 26 miles, it's 26.2. So I always like to go point 2 in my life. So I always like to do that extra no matter what bad is going on in my life. I always go point 2. So,
That's good.
yeah.
I look good on a shirt. I like
Mm,
that.
yeah.
Even though I don't run.
Mhm.
But
And it doesn't even have to be about running, but maybe it's what can I do to go that point 2 in a hockey game, that point 2 in school, that point 2 in work, and even that point 2 in relationships. I think sometimes people are really big on pointing out what someone's not good at and not as prompted to point out what good someone's doing.
sure.
And I think and people definitely do like tell me good job or that they're proud of me. I don't need that, but I think that as a society we should start doing that more. Like even just compliment someone's outfit or tell someone that they liked the recommendation they said in the meeting or say, "Hey, like I noticed you've been working really hard." Like start to acknowledge the good things people are doing, but also acknowledge the good you're doing.
Yeah, I think I think it also becomes easier to acknowledge the good that you're doing and the progress that you're making within your own
Mhm,
life when you start to do it for other people,
mhm,
right? Like it goes back to the idea that like being kind is
mhm,
selfish, because internally, it does something to you that one makes you more content in yourself,
mhm,
makes you more confident, and it brings out good energy
mhm,
in you, and while people say you should be kind and that kind of thing, which is all true,
mhm,
being kind is selfish. It's very selfish to you, but it's a good kind of thing to be selfish in, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
mhm. Yeah, I think that also helped me get through my hard times and when things constantly kept going bad, right? The care that I got from my doctors, the really positive message that I was seeing, and those little moments of good, right? So it could be this went terrible today, and it's a really powerful word, but that but word, right? This didn't happen. This went terrible. I didn't do good on this, but I got myself out of bed. I showed up.
Yeah,
And if you can transition to that and we're going to think negatively, right? That it's okay and it's there,
sure.
but let's also add a positive to it.
Yeah, I think, especially when I was in treatment, I feel like I always kind of modeled that in things that I wanted to do,
Mhm,
when that was pushing to go to school or, pushing to go to a hockey game or at least
mhm,
try to play. Um, but think, I think it's important for people to know because we talk about all these like good things and
mhm,
all these great mindsets that we have. Like when I was in treatment, I was like the worst human being like ever. Like I was mean for no reason. My brother got the brunt of it. My mom got the brunt of it. I was just not a kind person because I
mhm,
wasn't feeling kind about myself. And, people could say rightfully so. I was in treatment, I was going to the hospital every day. But, you know, I struggled. I was mean.
mhm.
And I'm sure even my buddies today from way back when, till this day, will look at you and be like, Dom was horrible for a little bit, right?
I have to say, and I think everyone deals with things differently in different circumstances. When I was sick in the hospital, I think I was a good patient. Like I was overall pretty kind, but I think it's just we all deal with things differently and our brains
Yeah.
are wired differently. But I think that I honestly think that may have been what got me through some of my things. Like I told jokes when I was in the hospital. They probably weren't good, but I did tell jokes, and I found joy in those little things.
Yeah.
Um, and just tried to, I think it's, you have to make the most out of your circumstance, even if it is a terrible circumstance. And maybe it's not in the moment, you're not ready to do that. But I think even you in our past few episodes, like talking to me about what you learned and who inspired you, like that's your good moment. For me, it was when I was in it. For you, it's reflecting on it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And I want to hear more about, you say you were bad, right? And your buddies say that you were pretty rough. Do you have any regret in that, or do you accept how you acted?
Um, I definitely regret it. I look back on it and know that it was part of, the wall that I was building at that time and to get, you know, through chemo, and hopefully get healthy. Um, I think I really, during that time, and I think this contributes a lot to it, I really took what we spoke about last week, right? Embracing the suck, right?
Mhm.
I took that to like a whole drastic new level, when I was going through treatment. Like I would almost get mad when I was going to treatment just
Mhm.
to like get, kind of in the headspace
Of
for it,
course.
I guess. But
And I think that's what works for you, right? So what worked for you was maybe being mad, being fired up, and kind of looking at it as a
sure. But that also brought out a lot in me that I didn't like, especially like so my brother
Mhm.
and my friends, I would rip on my buddies for
Mhm.
no reason. Not even like a fun kind of ripping. Like
Mhm.
I was just,
Rip them apart.
if I didn't have a good day or I wasn't feeling great or I had just walked up the stairs and couldn't breathe by the time I got to the
Mhm.
top, I was just I wasn't being a great friend, which was like also weird for my friends because I like to consider myself a great friend,
Mhm.
right? And there were times where I would have glimpses of that when I was, you know, feeling okay. My
Mhm.
body wasn't like shutting down internally. Um, so I'm sure they probably thought I was a little schizophrenic,
Mhm.
with the way I would go back and forth between um, ragging them and being the greatest friend they've ever had.
Mhm.
So
If you could say that you heard about a patient that maybe was acting similarly to how you were acting,
yeah.
what advice would you give them? Would you tell them it's okay? Would you get them to stop, or you know that that's what they need in that moment? Because I hear you say you regret it, so I wanna know what you would
Yeah.
do if here we have a person acting pretty similar to how you were.
I don't know if I could tell somebody that because that's not what I thought would work for me,
Mhm.
and I kinda did it inadvertently without knowing it.
Mhm. So
Um,
then do you think you should sit here and regret it if you inadvertently did it?
I don't regret it in the sense that, it worked, and I think it's what I needed, and I
Mhm.
didn't think there was any other option for me but
Yeah.
to, like we say, embrace the suck, right? Um, but I regret it in the sense of I don't wanna treat people that way,
Mhm.
you know? And I try not to, like, harp on, like, what I could have done
Mhm.
differently,
Mhm.
like, I don't regret that it happened, but I regret I treated people poorly,
Mhm.
for sure. Yeah,
Yeah. And I think that that's growth in itself, being able to sit here with me, with a camera in front of you, and to say, you regret how you treated people. Even though we can't go back and change it, I think that is powerful in itself. And I think that that's growth and that's success for you to be able to say that and now move forward with that intention of treating people cautiously or differently.
sure. Yeah, no, I definitely agree, I'm
Mhm.
sure my mom got the brunt of it,
Mhm.
so, Mom, if you're watching this, I'm sorry, but, yeah, it's not a kind human at times
Mhm.
back then.
But you're very kind now, so that's what
I
matters
am very
most.
kind? Alright, it's good to hear.
Yeah. And I want to talk a little bit about, we talked a lot about loss, like we talked a lot about growth, we talked about success.
Yeah.
Is there something that if you maybe in the moment you considered it a loss, but looking back on it now, do you still consider it a loss?
Hmm. Not that I can think of.
Mhm.
I would have to get back to you
Deep
on that.
dive? Okay, well, maybe we can revisit. I think for me, and sometimes it's still hard to accept this, but I often think of it as maybe you didn't make the team you wanted, but then you did end up on a really great team, right? Made some good
Yeah,
friendships. Or I think in our adult life, when you're interviewing for jobs, sometimes you interview for a job and you don't get it and you're really defeated. It feels like a really big loss for you. But then you end up landing a job that you absolutely love, the coworkers you love.
sure.
It feels like you're exactly where you need to be. But in the moment when you hear those words that they're not the candidate you're going with, it feels like a loss, right? And it feels awful and it feels terrible. But then often when we get that win, and sometimes we are, thank God I never got that job that I originally applied for because I wouldn't end up here.
Yep.
Sometimes we don't have that mentality. And I think maybe it was still a loss for you, but maybe we
Mm,
can view it as a good loss. I think there are
yeah.
you said that the first word that comes to mind is bad. And most losses, especially in the sports world, they are bad, right? But maybe there are some losses that can be good.
I'm gonna have to disagree with you here.
Mhm.
I think losses are bad. The growth that accompanies loss is good and essential.
Mhm.
But I think, at least for me, if I don't have the perception that loss is, you know,
Mhm.
thumbs down, then, I'm not gonna want to take the steps to grow,
Mhm.
to find the success.
Of course. Yeah, and I think with that, like for me in that moment, not getting that job was a bad loss. But then I think looking back at it now, I could be like, it actually was a good loss because it landed me at such an amazing place to get this job. And I hear what you're saying that
But do you look at it from the perspective of, I mean, I guess you could still categorize it as a good loss, but was that loss essential for you to make the growth to do better in your next interview, to land the next job?
I guess it helped me maybe reflect on what I can improve on in my interviewing
Okay,
skills.
but that wasn't your lifeline for it.
It wasn't, I think, because at that point in my life, my main goal was to get a job. So it's like I won an interview, I didn't get this job, I knew I had to go on another interview.
Okay.
No matter what, like that was
Yeah.
my goal. Um, and I think that for me, I guess I was just again so like self-critical about what I did wrong in it, and I blamed myself when really the company just went with someone else, right?
Sure.
But in the moment, I was like, "This is terrible. This is awful." But I think looking back at it now, I can say it was a good loss, and it's not because it pushed me to do something. I think it's just had that not happened, I wouldn't have
Mhm.
ended up at this job.
Okay. Yeah, I get that.
I think it depends on the circumstance and the situation. Um, but I do hear what you're saying, and I'm big with that, that our losses are what motivates us.
Yeah.
But sometimes they don't for people. Sometimes it does the opposite. Has it ever done the opposite for you in your life or anything where you maybe have just given up or give it a, well, this is terrible type of mentality instead of growing?
Yeah. I felt that way with soccer after I came back from, like, fresh out of chemo where, I had found a new travel team. I started to play. I wasn't getting time. I didn't feel like I was playing good. I wasn't fitting, like, with the team well. Um, and I just got discouraged
Mhm.
and I stopped. Um, and that was tough. Not only because, you know, I wasn't playing anymore, but it was the first time I felt, especially with soccer, like, hey, I don't want to do this right
Mm,
now or really ever at
mhm,
this point. Um, and that's how I was feeling. And, you know, I'm a big person that can get upset or frustrated when I realize I'm having a thought that I don't want to have.
mhm,
So to me, it's not so much, at least my internal, struggles are not so much with the thought itself, but the fact is, how could I, Dom, I know who I am, have that thought?
mhm,
That's where my struggle is.
mm. Yeah, and I think it's important you say that because sometimes something that we love or something that we always saw ourselves doing or that even other people saw us doing, sometimes we get into that. Maybe I don't want this anymore, or I don't want this isn't enjoyable for me anymore. And it is really hard to push through that
For sure.
thought.
Yeah.
Right now I'm facing that a little bit with running, surprisingly.
Yeah.
I've always been a runner. It's been the one thing that I love to do, that I've always done. Was training for the marathon, running 7 to 18 miles a day. Um, and now I run 3 miles a day, which still great that I'm getting out there
Way
every
more
day
than
and
me.
running that. But it's not as easy for me to do it. I
Yeah.
used to in the past just be like, I'm gonna go for a run. Where now I'm not as like, sometimes I'm like, oh, gotta go for a run today. And I'm in the same state of like, how could I be feeling this way? Like, I'm a runner. Like, how am I having these
Yeah.
thoughts? But I think we have to, like you said it before, give ourselves grace, and almost, instead of questioning why we're having it, maybe just be like, oh, maybe you need to take a break and then go back to it. You don't need to give it up forever.
Yeah, I sometimes go through that with roller hockey too, especially with why are you laughing?
I thought you were just talking about the last
No,
team
you
you
know
were
what I'm
on.
gonna say. Yeah. The struggles of men's league, and especially if you don't know men's league roller hockey, like games could be at 11 o'clock at night,
Mhm.
and driving a
Yeah.
half hour there and back.
The last season was not too well.
Yeah, I mean, love the fellas to death, but it was a rough go. It was a rough go for us. But I feel like you go through times where I don't want to do this,
Mhm.
blah blah.
Yeah.
But there's never been a time where I walked into that rink, played a game, took my gear off, and started to walk out, and have been like, I shouldn't have came.
Mhm.
Not once has
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
ever happened,
Yeah.
even in some huge
That
blowouts.
That's a good point too. I think recently too, and it's been so cold out, and I'm a big person. I don't like the treadmill, so I'll run outside, which I think adds into my motivation not being as there. But I go for the run, and during it, I'm like, why am I doing this? I shouldn't have done this. I don't like this. But once I finish it, I'm like, I'm so glad I did that. Like
Yeah,
it
yeah,
feels awesome that I did that.
yeah. I'm sure if there's any gym goers that are watching this podcast right now, I'm sure it's the same kind of thing. I mean, personally, tried to get in the gym, especially when I got out of chemo, wanted to get stronger. Never grew to like the gym,
Hmm.
like ever. Like everyone I talk to is like, stick with it, stick with it. And that's something I get behind, right? We just talked about being
Yeah.
relentless for 45 minutes.
But if you don't like it, you don't like it.
Yeah, and I couldn't lock into it, so I started playing more hockey.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that I struggle with, because I don't like the gym either. I've also had to be super careful with weights and all because of my back. Also, I've been insecure in the gym, which I think a lot of people can relate to. But I've never loved the gym.
Yeah,
And for me, once like college sports ended, it's such a hard thing to adapt to life. It's like
mhm,
a whole identity
yeah,
loss,
yeah,
and you don't know who you are,
yep,
which is definitely for another episode. But I always had running, but sometimes it's okay to not want to do the same thing every single day.
yeah,
But for me, it's
yep,
like, well, what else am I going to do? And I'm someone where like I need to be active every day. And sometimes I will walk, but that's why I think for me, I'm so hard on myself when I get into these, I call it running ruts, where I
yeah,
just like am over it. But I think it just makes it hard, like not having that other passion. Um, Especially since college sports ended, on trying to find it, and it is hard. But I think that instead of getting so mad at ourselves for having them, just give yourself grace and
yeah,
acknowledge that it's okay.
yep, yeah. Um, totally lost my train of thought.
Yeah. Um,
Do you know what it's time for?
I think you're gonna say quote of the week, but
Quote of the week. But what's up?
before we get into that, I do want to talk a little about something, because it goes along with our topic, but the Olympics having going on.
Oh yeah,
And I don't know if you heard about Lindsey Vaughn.
she got hurt, right?
She got hurt, but going a little bit back, she tore her ACL,
Okay.
worked really hard, had an amazing comeback, was ready to compete in this year's
And
Olympics.
just for the people that don't know, what event did she do? What did she do?
She's a snowboarder.
Snowboard. I thought she was ski.
Maybe she's ski. One of the snowboarding or skiing.
Yeah, I thought
Uh,
she was slalom ski, I think.
Okay.
I could be wrong.
You could be right, but Moral of the story, um, just in a recent event, she crashed and was airlifted.
Yeah.
And that you got to think about here. You asked me the question, right? Bad after bad. How do you get yourself out of that mentality and come back? And my heart breaks for her that she had this big thing where tearing her ACL is a pretty long
Yep.
recovery,
Yep.
hard to come back. You're in the Olympics competing on like a world stage for everyone to see.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, she crashes, and not only does she crash, but she gets significantly hurt. I haven't read up on what the outcome was, but I do know she was airlifted.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, what do you take from that and putting our episode all together for her story and for her to get through this?
If I was her right now, me personally, I know I would be at this stage right now where I would be in the embrace the suck stage, you know? I know for me, that's where, I would be at fresh off
Mhm.
an injury. So I never want to tell anyone else, where to be.
Mhm.
I encourage you to have a positive mindset or just a mindset that works for you and what you want to be productive at. Um, but yeah, if it was me, I would be in the embrace the suck
Mhm.
stage,
Yeah.
and
And I agree. I
I don't
think
know where I'd go
you,
after that.
um, I think it's hard. And I think we talk a lot of it about like, this is terrible, but this happened in the positive. But I think in that moment, you're just coming off an injury. Now you get injured again. It's really hard just to shift to what am I going to learn for this? What am I going to grow? And I
Yeah,
want our listeners to know you don't have to do all of that right away. You don't have to have it all figured out. You can have some really bad days and let them be bad and not find a good in that day.
you never have to
You
have it figured out,
you
but
don't have.
you have to be willing
Mhm.
to figure it out.
Yes. And I think there comes a point where it's like, let yourself be mad, let yourself be upset, but don't let yourself be mad and upset forever. Right? There has to come to a point where you've let it hurt, you've let it be painful, you've been disappointed, but now let's get to a point of that resilient shift. And that shift can still come with holding on to a little bit of disappointment, but let
Yeah,
that disappointment fuel you.
I think that goes back to what we were saying about putting things in boxes,
Mhm.
right?
Of course.
And putting things where they belong and when you could, reach into the
Mhm.
box and when you let the box sit in the shelf
Mhm.
and collect dust for, a horrible metaphor.
Yeah.
But
Mhm. Okay. So now, but go back to what you're saying. What is it time for?
quote of the week, but while we're on the Olympics, let's talk Olympic hockey.
Okay.
My boys are coming for gold. We got the USA roller hat on here.
We do.
When's the first
Saturday,
game? Saturday, right?
Saturday,
Sean Avery, Bull Smith Tavern.
he is going to be there. I hear.
Sean Avery, I hope you see this. We're coming.
It is my goal to get a picture with
We're
him.
coming.
Um, I loved watching Sean Avery when I was little. I think it's why, and you're not going to like me for making the comparison, but I think
He's
it's
not Rem.
not that he's Matt Rempe, but I love Matt Rempe's like style of aggression and what he brings to the team. And if you remember watching Sean Avery as a kid, you remembered him as a fighter and the grit and like glory he brought to the ice.
Remember him, Marty Brodeur.
Yes, but love Sean Avery. We're super excited to possibly see you Saturday. So if any of our followers want to get this to him, do your magic.
Yeah,
Um,
Sean Avery.
mhm.
Huge fans here.
Yeah, and let's talk about now that you bring up the Olympics, and then I promise we'll get to the quote of the week. But few Ranger players on the Olympic
Yeah,
roster.
you got Troch Foxes, right?
Fox did not make it. A lot of controversy around him
Oh
not making
no,
it.
so you got Troch, Miller, and I think that's it, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Zibanejad's playing, but on a different team.
Yeah, he's Swedish.
Swedish.
Zibanejad.
But how do all of those players, like right now, the Rangers mentally are
Checked out.
struggling, right? How do they now get themselves to compete in the Olympics?
I think it's an adrenaline thing, I know you know, I'm sure these guys have dreamed of doing this since,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they first held the hockey stick.
Of course. And I think the environment they're in also changes it, right? They're not on a team that's been losing for a while. I think the Rangers have a lot of emotions going on right now. Panarin
Yeah, there's a lot of
just being
talent.
traded.
Yeah.
But now they're in a much different environment. I think sometimes too that helps the environment you're in, the people you surround yourself
Sometimes you just
with.
need a change up.
Yep, it helps you either achieve your goals, not achieve your goals, or get you through those hard times.
Yep.
But good luck to all of them, and I'm excited for it. I think it will be a good change of pace and
Just
style.
wait till we see Canada again.
Mm,
Canada's got a good team though. They do have a really good roster.
they do. I think it's pretty stacked up. I'm excited to see a lot of the teams play.
Yeah, I'm US till I die, obviously. But I am super excited to see Macklin Celebrini play in this Olympics.
Mm.
Personally, I think he's going to light it up, but I hope not against us. I hope
Mm.
we could shut him down. But
Let's go Team USA.
yep, that's it.
But let's hear a quote of the week.
Quote of the week. Quote of the week. My quote I made up during this episode. Actually, you made it up.
I made it up.
You made it up. Yep. My
goodness.
quote this week is clip it. Right? What you were speaking about, if you had to create a highlight reel of your day or, a highlight reel from a game, right? You gotta clip it, right? You gotta find your thing and clip it. Put it up here, remember it. Yes, that's my quote. My quote is clip it. So I encourage everybody this week, right, to find one thing a day and clip it. Clip it up here.
I like it. Make that highlight reel. And you might think it's hard, but you have to act like you have to make a highlight reel for something, whether it's for a job, for your loved one. Pretend it's something you have to do every day, and your life will change. It does. It really makes a difference.
Make a highlight reel.
Mhm.
Clip it.
Yes.
What
I
about
like
you?
it. Okay, so it's a lighthouse doesn't lessen the storm; it guides you through it. If you're struggling, know this: someone cares, someone's here. You're not alone. So the biggest part of this that I like is a lighthouse doesn't lessen the storm, it guides you through it. And if you're familiar with PS I Love You Day, that's coming up on Friday.
Yeah.
A big initiative around kindness. And this year's theme is Be a Light. So that's why I liked that quote in particular. Be a light. I have the bracelet. It's something that's really important to me. So when I read that quote about the lighthouse,
Yeah.
it really stood out to me. I think sometimes we can't lessen the storm we're in, right? And a lighthouse it's meant to help those boats, right? But it can't get them out of a storm. It just can guide them back to shore. And I think sometimes it's our mindset, the people that we surround ourselves with, the kind words we hear that get us through our hard times.
Yeah.
So I really liked it, and I think that it's special and it's important. We talked a lot about kindness in our last episode, and it really costs nothing to be kind, and you really have no idea what someone's going through. Someone can have the biggest smile on their face and be struggling.
Sure.
So you always want to be kind, and whether it's complimenting someone or just doing a good deed every single day, and you just want to be a light in today's world and make someone's day brighter, and be a lighthouse that gets them through.
Yeah.
So it's my quote.
Love it.
Thank you. Okay, well, I think that's all we have, unless you have anything else you want our listeners to know.
Not really. If
Yep.
you're struggling, be relentless, keep going.
Mhm.
Talk to a friend, find what works for you because struggles are inevitable.
Mhm.
I went through a little one, this past weekend. And it was tough, but figure out what works for you in that moment and hold on to that.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. And like I said, it takes nothing to be kind. And on PS I Love You Day, February 13th, we want to encourage all of our listeners to be kind, do an extra deed, buy the person's coffee behind you, or just smile at a stranger, right? Say hello. For those younger kids, ask someone new to play with you at recess, say with someone new at lunch. And then if you're older, just reach out to a new colleague, right? I think it's always important to help people feel like they matter and that they're important in this world.
This episode is going to be available on YouTube and Spotify. If you are not following the podcast, follow us on Instagram at Resilient Shift Pod. Also, check out at Better Days Long Island for some merch and a little bit more about the mission of me and my business and, finishing chemotherapy. So thank you so much for watching The Resilient Shift, and we will see you next week with a guest.
And happy Valentine's Day to all of our listeners. You're all loved, and love is defined in so many ways, but you're all loved and you're all important. And just make sure you show that extra care and love for someone. this weekend.